So now let's get into the really important stuff, right? The internet. Anybody nervous yet? Just me? Okay. Here's how this works. Your website is like your office. Okay, that's what clients see. That's your home base. Newsletter is how you're going to communicate with your clients. LinkedIn is your water cooler. Okay, so that's where you talk about the professional people at your water cooler. Your blog is where you're giving information to people at work. You know, it might be a company newsletter. Facebook is like having people over for your family dinner. Okay, they're people you know. Twitter is like the barbecue. Okay, and YouTube is the morning after. Be careful what you do at the barbecue. It might hurt you the morning after. So how do you put it all together? First of all, start with your website. The first thing I want you guys to do is the same with evaluating your team that you've got already. Look at your website and go, what does this tell somebody who's trying to get a position with our company? Okay, is it friendly for them? And then the next thing I would do is put out a newsletter. Okay, now you don't have to do all this at the same time. Okay, do it piece by piece. Do it as you're ready for it. Okay. First of all, you've already got existing drivers or existing clients, right? Don't neglect them. They're already there, right? So make sure that you're communicating to them. Make sure that you know how they feel. So I would start with a company newsletter. Once a month is a great space for a company newsletter. The next one would be LinkedIn. And I think most of you are on this. If you're not, go and put a profile on LinkedIn. The next thing I wowould start with is a blog. Okay, so once you've got your website to where it should be, you've got your newsletter going, I would start with a blog. And the nice thing is that the blog stuff can be used for your newsletter. Don't think you have to spend all day writing every day. Like if you do a blog, you can actually copy and paste that and use that for your newsletter story or vice versa, right? Okay. The next one is Twitter. And again, Twitter is a place that follows you. So all of these articles here, and Twitter, the first thing I found with Twitter is that they only have 140 characters, right? Like, I like to talk, so one sentence, what's even the point of signing up, right? But you'll see how it goes is that whatever you put in the title is what the sentence is on Twitter. So if you're going to have a blog post, make sure your title is really good so it attracts people to click on that link and go to your blog and read about it. So Twitter, a lot of guys are on Twitter. Company information. I bet you if you take a poll and find out how many of your drivers are on Twitter, 75% of them are probably on Twitter. Because this is how they're connecting with their families, right? This is how they're connecting with their interests. Somebody puts in trucks, owner-operators, whatever. Select Trucks will come up. So, yeah, not all of them live around here. They're not all going to be, people that may come and work for you. But they might know people who come and work for you, right? So Twitter is a very important way of doing it all. And then YouTube, again, like I said, make sure that you get videos if you can. They don't have to be the top quality if you can't afford that. Try to get the best quality as you can. But start letting people know about your business. And people are into viewing things. I mean, my wife's got one of those new iPhones now. Facebook pops up every movie this thing is going on because she's got Facebook hooked up right on her iPhone. Same with YouTube. She'll be sitting there on the couch and she'll say, oh, you just updated your blog. How do you know that? Well, it just came up on Facebook. She doesn't read my blog on the blog. She reads it on Facebook. So it's very important. That's what everybody's doing nowadays. So don't be left in the dark. So like I say, you can link everything, right? So your blog's going to link Twitter and Facebook, YouTube. YouTube is great. You ever see on the videos they have YouTube, the logo in the corner of videos? That means it came off of YouTube. The transportation industry has always been kind of far behind. We've never really had to do a lot of marketing and stuff outside of our. But you have to now. That's where everybody is. If we don't, you're not gonna find out about any drivers. They're not gonna find out about you because they're all on this stuff, right? So I would get on it. Most of these platforms can be updated by email. Anybody in here can't send an email? Hold up your hand if you can't send an email. Oh, good. Kim, put your hand up. No, really, you can update your blog by email. You can update Facebook by email, and you can update Twitter by email. So you actually don't have to go on to any of these platforms too. You have to go and set them up, but you can do it all by email. All right. So your website's king. I would start with a website, then do newsletter and LinkedIn, and then do the four at the bottom: blog, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
Thank you for having me. So the first thing I was just going to start with is we were asked to bring forward challenges, and we all know the challenges. The challenges are many, and the challenges are getting worse. And really, ultimately, the biggest single issue is that we're dealing with a shrinking labor market, and we sometimes have tunnel vision in our industry, I think, and feel that that labor market issue is specifically related to the transportation sector. But the reality is that every industry and every sector is facing the same challenges. Our workforce is shrinking. The people that are coming into the workforce have a very different mindset in terms of what they want. Their expectations from employers are very different. And the difficult thing really is that it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get any better. So it's really about us changing to adapt to what the labor market is looking for. So we're dealing with an aging population. There's a lot of talk about what's happening in terms of the baby boomers. That's certainly affecting our industry. So people are retiring, our workforce is aging. We're not just facing competition from other carriers in the industry, but we're facing competition from all kinds of other sectors for that shrinking pool of labor market. What people want from their employers is very different, and I think that we deal with a pretty cynical labor force now. We, for people before my generation, people worked for a company and they thought that they would retire with that company, and people had a lot of loyalty to their employers, and they were tolerant of the bad times with their employers because they expected that they were going to stay there and have a job until they retire. And certainly in the last couple of decades, we've seen that employers are a lot less loyal to their labor force. We're dealing with a lot of people that are coming into our industry that have been downsized and they've been outsourced, and it's not even just specific positions that are being moved overseas. It's entire companies are moving their operations overseas because labor is cheaper. So, we're certainly seeing, certainly in our company, that the candidates that we're dealing with have, they don't feel that loyalty to an employer is well placed. They feel that loyalty is all about loyalty to themselves and loyalty to their families and their personal situations. So what they're expecting from us is very different, and what we can in turn expect from them is also very different. And the final one, there's certainly, I'm sure, many, many more, but risk management. And I'm not a risk manager in our industry, but I certainly work with our risk manager, and it's pretty fractious on occasion now. It can be very tough in our industry as a recruiter to find the people that aren't just qualified to meet our standards, but now satisfy the demands of our risk managers. So we're certainly, accident rating, CSA 2010, in terms of our experienced labor market is really big, very focused on abstracts. We're becoming more and more focused on what references say about people.
I kind of looked at this as a Jane Gunn's best practices. These are my rules that work for me. And I only have one, and the reason I did that is so I remember it and I stick to it. I figured if I gave myself a whole bunch of rules, it'd be difficult to follow. So there's one in my mind, and it kind of summarizes the whole recruiting process for me. So if it works for me, it doesn't necessarily mean it will work for you, but I'm sure you will take back some of my rule number one to your company. So here's my rule. Meet mutual expectations. Make sure that what you're doing, you're both mutually in agreement upon. Everything within your organization, what you do, you need to mutually explain it to your prospective candidates and agree that that's the right fit for them. So here's my top 10 list. Ensure the applicant meets the company's hiring criteria. Standards need to be developed and adhered to. We are in, and it's going to get worse, a horrific driver shortage. But don't compromise your company's core values just to fill a seat. Number 2, and probably should be number 1, as far as what the driver and the expectations are. Home and family time required. What expectations do they have for time on the road and time being home for their reset or their time off? Pay packages need to be clearly defined so there's no guessing. on how much or who pays for what. Now, there's two different beasts here. Owner-operators, you got your tolls, your bridges, your transponders, permits, plates, insurance, fuel tax, road tax, satellite stripping. Is the company paying for that, or is this something that the broker is going to pay for? Make sure it's mutually agreed upon up front. Expectations of miles to meet financial obligations. Let's do the math. If his truck payment is $2,500 a month, and you as a carrier can only provide him 2,000 miles a week, let's face it, you're going to bankrupt him. Do you want to bring him on? Lanes being traveled in areas they won't go. New York City, anyone? Are you looking to go to Texas? Because I can't provide that. You got to have realistic expectations and make sure they understand your lanes. If they are looking to go to Texas and California and you run the Eastern Seaboard, they're not the right fit. Expectations need to be clearly defined from safety. Meetings, training, hours of service, satellite, sensor track reports, disciplinary actions. Make sure the driver knows up ahead of time what he's in for. Do you have a safety meeting once a week? Once a month? Is that something he needs to commit to? Make sure it's lined up out front. General working conditions that he or she is going to work under. What regulations do they need to adhere to? Is there random drug testing they're going to be involved in? These are all things that they need to know at the front door to make that educated decision. Safety. Safety going to meet them at the truck stop. What's going to happen if they do? Ticket procedures. Expectations of conduct with office personnel, customers, and operations. You don't want to have a screaming match between your drivers and your dispatchers. That's the last thing you ever want. You need a conflict resolution process that they know where to go if they encounter a problem. Expectations for pickup and delivery of freight and the process to follow if not able to make it as scheduled. They're going to be late. They're stuck at the border. What do? You need to tell them. Do they call customer service? Are they supposed to call the customer themselves? Do they notify dispatch? Let them know what they need to do. And this is very important. Ensure that you both share the same core values, ethics, morals, that they understand yours and that they agree with it. Be brutally honest. I always say that the greatest tool a recruiter has is admitting when it's not the right fit and not hiring them. Be brutally honest and tell them.
But I want you to understand what works for us, what doesn't work for us. And what Jane said earlier about being brutally honest is number one. We give out more no's than we give yeses. Recruiting trends, we've sort of beaten the hell out of that this morning with odds and sods and going from walk-in applicants to phone calls to applications. Now we're into the Kijijis, the Craigslist, the Facebooks, LinkedIn, you name it. It's pretty mind-boggling for everybody. Recruiting takes time. The recruiting process takes time. So be careful in going too quickly to say, you're hired, you start on Monday. Because it's not that easy. I live by a rule of thumb, I call it the 5 A's. I teach the 5 A's. Anybody know the 5 A's? If you follow it to a T, you will hire good people. First A, appearance, aptitude, attitude, ability to learn, and ambassadorship. Would anybody deal with demographics? If you're a recruiter, you better know all about demographics. You guys know about demographics? Baby boomers. But ages of what? 1945 to 1965. Baby boomers. 1965 to 1985. X generation. 11% smaller than the baby boomers. You wonder why all those guys are coming to your office with 15 jobs on your resume? And he's 32 years old? Because he can.